Hey y'all, my name is Brooke Richmond. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and we are back for another conversation about Ginny and Georgia. We're going to be diving into season 3, episodes 1 and 2. Let's go. Where are we with everything, right? So, season 2 ends with Georgia getting arrested at her wedding for unaliving Cynthia's husband. Okay. So now we're here. It's season 3, and Georgia is behind bars. We have Ginny, who has decided to go to school even after her mom got arrested over the weekend. She's at school, she's dealing with her peers, looking at her, talking about her behind her back. Everyone has questions. I'm sure there's all kinds of rumors going around, and Ginny is just having to take all of this in, right? So I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Ginny today. Excuse me. I'm going to be spending a lot of time on Ginny and just what we're seeing with Ginny. And I will say that my heart goes out to Ginny. I don't know if it's because I'm also a firstborn or because I'm a therapist, of course. It could be a combination of the two, but I am just like, I'm just such a big fan of Ginny and just her strength, um, her vulnerability, and just everything about her character and just the things that she's just continuously taking on, right? So let's talk about Ginny. So what we're seeing with Ginny is we see she's stressed, we see she's anxious, we see she's overwhelmed, we see that she's clearly triggered because she's constantly popping her rubber band, right? And as she's using her rubber band, I want to give her a shout out because she is really trying to use healthy coping skills, right? Because we know if she's not popping that rubber band, she's burning, right? And she wants to burn. That's why she's trying to use her other tools, right? And so I just want to give her a shout out for trying to develop healthier coping skills. I have here on my notes, that it's a process. It's a process of learning versus unlearning certain behaviors, right? So she has learned to deal with her stress and her triggers in a certain way, in an unhealthy way, which was burning herself. And she's trying to unlearn that by learning new coping skills, which is the popping of the rubber band. She's trying to learn healthier ways to deal with her stress and her anxiety and just feeling overwhelmed, right? And so that's something that is important to look at, even like within ourselves. Like, what are you struggling with? I'm even thinking about, what am I struggling with? And would I have a hard time developing, or would you have a hard time developing a new behavior, a new way of coping with whatever you're struggling with? Because that's real, that's a real thing. And so that's just, something to think about. And I just really want to shout out Jenny for trying. You can tell that she's really trying. Um, Another shout out to Jenny is for her self awareness, right? So we see in the therapy session, shout out to the therapist. She's great, by the way. But we see in the therapy session that Jenny is able to recognize that she's triggered and she's overwhelmed. And because she's triggered and overwhelmed, she is understanding that she's having the urge to burn, right? And I just love that she was just so honest about it. And that is really important. If you are in therapy, if you are considering going to therapy, it is important to be honest and transparent. And so, shout out to Jenny for being honest about having the urge to burn, right? Um, I want to give a side shout out to the therapist. I love that she created a safety plan with Jenny. We want to make sure Jenny is safe, right? Because she's having the urge to burn, which means it might happen. This is what she knows, right? So the fact that the therapist created a safety plan with Jenny is so important because that's real. Like, clients, people, humans, whatever, we can relapse. We can have moments where we go back to those old behaviors because they feel familiar, they're comfortable, they're safe, and it's just a process of trying to unlearn certain behaviors that you've been engaging in for so long, right? So I feel like the safety plan was also like the therapist's way of giving Ginny space and grace to just not always get it right. She may not always go to her rubber band. She may not always journal or write her poetry about her feelings. She may not always be able to do that because she's still trying to learn, unlearn these behaviors, right? And I just love that not only the safety plan, but the show itself is normalizing that we can relapse, even if we are learning these tools and these skills that are helpful, that are healthier. We're human, right? And so the fact that Ginny may not relapse, I don't know. I'm only speaking on episodes 1 and 2. The fact that she has this safety plan in place is going to be really helpful with getting her back on track, right? So versus before, all she knew was burning. That was it. But now she knows additional tools. She has additional tools in her toolbox where she can use those tools to help her get back on track. And we also make sure she stays safe. Okay. So I wanted to highlight that. Um, just overall, Ginny is just trying to make progress. I think she's making a lot of progress. I think she's really trying. And I just want to give her a shout out for that. Now, the biggest scene, the most like mind blowing scene of episode 1 in particular is when Ginny was confronting Georgia about unaliving Cynthia's husband. I know y'all remember this scene, not this episode. I know y'all remember this scene. That was heartbreaking, right? So what do we see? We see Georgia completely manipulating, gaslighting Ginny, and it is on 10. I was just like, wow. I was heartbroken. I was heartbroken. My heart just broke for Ginny because, we see her go from confronting Georgia to comforting Georgia. What? Like, like you just want to just grab Ginny and just hug her tight and tell her that, it's okay and she matters and her feelings matter. And, just the complete opposite happened. Georgia just completely flipped the script and Ginny fell for it. And she falls for it every time, right? And so within their relationship, within the mother-daughter relationship, the parent-child relationship, this creates a lot of confusion, lack of trust, and safety for Ginny. And it's added stress for Ginny as a whole. And so, it's just like my heart just goes out to Ginny, and just everything that she's constantly having to carry when it comes to her relationship with her mom, right? Ginny is just constantly put in a position to be responsible for George's feelings, for her actions. There are no boundaries in the relationship. The relationship is completely enmeshed, right? And it's just overall unhealthy. Relationship is overall unhealthy. Something else I want to point out that I'm seeing with Ginny in episodes 1 and 2 specifically is her trauma response. So we know, or maybe you may not know, but the 4 trauma responses are fight, freeze, fawn. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So we know fight, you you ready to go. Bah, 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 bah. You can be a little bit more aggressive. You can maybe be a little controlling. You want to defend yourself. Flight, there's most of the time with flight, we see anxiety. We see you just trying to get away, trying to escape. And with all of the trauma responses, let me just say this really quickly. With all the trauma responses, this is either emotionally and or physically, okay? Just want to make sure there's an understanding there. With freeze, you just completely go numb. You're disconnected. With fawn, we see that or with fawn, what I've seen just in my experience and working with clients and things like that, you just give in. You become a people pleaser. There are no boundaries. That is the trauma response that I'm seeing with Ginny. Okay. I see some other ones and I'll mention that later, but the main one that I'm seeing that I'm feeling like is a pattern here is fawn. We see that she responds mainly in her relationship with Georgia. She generally gives in. She's generally trying to keep her mom happy, trying to make sure she's okay, trying to take care of her. And there are clearly no boundaries in the relationship, right? And um we see that she prioritizes George's needs over her own. That trauma response can be identified as fawn. She's just trying to make sure everything is okay. When she's feeling upset, when she's feeling triggered, when she's feeling anxious, stressed, overwhelmed, her feelings no longer matter. And she's just trying to respond to the feelings and the needs of others, but mainly Georgia, her mom. Um, and so like I was saying, I do feel like she um exhibit some of the other trauma responses, right? So I mentioned here we see freeze and we see flight at different times. The burning is definitely her emotionally trying to escape her problems, right? We see and then at the end of episode 2, we see Ginny is now starting to display the flight trauma response, right? And I love that as Georgia, I think Georgia was narrating that piece at the end where they got into an argument and Georgia was going after her and Ginny was like, I'm out of here, right? We hear Georgia talking about like that was what was modeled for Ginny to run away from her problems, to try to get away, to try to escape. But what Georgia mentioned was, I never thought she would also be trying to escape me. But this is what I've modeled for her. And that is so important to recognize that our parents, our attachment figures, caregivers, whoever was a part of raising you, a lot of what we do, what we say, how we act, how we respond to things, a lot of it has to do with what was modeled for us, right? And we're starting to see some of that with Ginny, especially at the end of episode 2. So I just, I want to leave the viewers with this question, because Jenny's character has caused me to reflect on my own self, as a therapist, but also just as a human, as a daughter, as a sister. Like, how am I showing up in different relationships in my life? And Jenny's character is just helping me to reflect on what are my coping strategies, what are some behaviors I'm trying to learn and unlearn, and what is my trauma response, what do I tend to do. So that's something that you know you can also think about. What are your coping skills, what are your coping strategies, what are you learning and unlearning, and then what's your trauma response? I want to hear about that in the comments. Please share, because we're all just trying and trying to do our best. We're all just trying to grow and develop in different ways at different paces, right? So I just want to highlight Ginny. I want to send Ginny so much love and light. I don't know what's to come for the rest of season 3, but so far this is what I'm seeing with Ginny, and I just want to make sure that we just hold Ginny tight, close to our hearts. Okay. Something I just want to say before I for real leave y'all. Let me give a shout out to Paul. Paul is the real MVP. He is holding it down with the kids. He is showing up for Georgia. And, Georgia, we know the truth, right? And she's standing on business with her story and her truth, right? But Paul is still showing up for her. And so I'm definitely going to be getting into Paul in other videos and highlighting some things that I'm seeing with him, but I just wanted to give him a quick shout out. All right, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're seeing, maybe what stood out to you in this video. And then, of course, I want to know, like, what are your coping strategies? What are your coping skills? What do you feel like your trauma response is? Is it fight, flight, freeze, fawn? Is it all of them? Do you have certain situations that bring out the different responses? I want to hear all about it. All right. All right. Thanks, y'all. Peace.